So, I wanted to make a video that talks about love addiction, codependency, and how relationships can sometimes make people go crazy and lose themselves and kind of collapse and just run into all kinds of issues, with not paying bills or different addictions and things, and how it can be a path to like your downfall or it can be a path to awakening, you know? And I think that in my work as a tarot reader, empath, and intuitive psychic, I deal with a lot of people who are struggling with love addiction, like hardcore. And that turns into psychic addiction. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who suffer from love addiction who don't call psychics, but they might, extend their addiction to, shopping or partying or something to kind of medicate the ups and downs, control the ups and downs that the relationship might create. So, usually if there's love addiction, there's some other kind of addiction going on as well. Could be sex addiction, could be shopping, could be whatever. So basically, any addiction is a doorway to self discovery and healing and enlightenment because it's basically, you know, you're out of control, you're compulsive, you're trying to use something outside of yourself to fill a pain or a void or an emptiness that you may or may not be even conscious of. But that's usually the basis. It's a distraction from what really truly is hurting you. And the addiction and the consequences of the addiction and the drama that ensues when we get really stuck in an addiction, whether it's, the law getting involved or, friends and family kind of like criticizing us, or shame, guilt over why do I do this? I'm doing this. I can't control myself. It's like the ego and the mind just get wrapped up in obsessing about whatever it is that you're focused on. In this case, in the relationship and the other addictions that kind of come out of that, that you don't really pay attention to, like what is at the source. Why is there an emptiness? Why do you need this thing to make you feel better? Why, because on some addictions, there's a chemical element involved. For myself recently, I started smoking again after being smoke free for like 4 or 5 years almost. I started smoking again, and I wasn't expecting it. I thought I could have one on Halloween, and I wanted another, and then I wanted another, and another, and another. So, on one hand, you could just look at it as, well, I started it, it kind of triggered my brain, there's this physiological thing that happens, my body wanted more, and that kind of thing, and that's all true. But the next day, I had a choice on, do I smoke another one or do I commit to being a non smoker and healthy and not addicted to anything? And I made the choice to keep smoking. And the source of that was fear. Because at that moment in my life, I knew that like some big changes were up ahead for me. And I needed to be courageous. And I needed to probably, ultimately end up facing my aloneness. Because I was about to realize that I was going to end a relationship, a very important relationship. And so it was like my fearful self was like, I need this thing to keep me company, to make me courageous, to focus my mind, all these different things, to rebel, to, I need this thing as I go through this change. And I have since quit just recently. And since quitting, I've had all kinds of emotional, feelings come up that I was sort of suppressing during this period. I did, I do think, I used to believe that, with smoking or caffeine, like you just suppress everything, you can't really feel your real feelings if you're taking these drugs or chemicals and things. And now that I've re-experienced it, I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think you still are experiencing your feelings and your thoughts clearly, but not at the depth that you would if you weren't medicating yourself with the substance and the activity. It helps make it more tolerable, and it helps to distract you from the intensity of feelings of powerlessness that inevitably come up in life, that we spiritually have to reconcile with one way or another and find it within ourselves to, stand in our power and move forward and make choices and not have constant panic attacks, and to deal with the roots of whatever emptiness or fears that we have, where they come from, usually in our childhood, in our relationship with our family and parents and siblings and things. And so anyway, I realized, I do think you do feel your feelings, but not as deeply, and perhaps you aren't forced, because you are kind of medicating, you're kind of micromanaging things through the addiction. You're not forced to really look at things as deeply as when you don't have anything to turn to. You just have to feel it and think about it and face it, So that's what I've been doing since I quit, is like really feeling and facing it. And it's very intense. But after going through that, I really do feel much more empowered and optimistic and strong, and clear about what my wounds are, what are my triggers, and things like that. And so I think that, relationships can kind of act in the same way. There's different kinds of relationship addictions, and codependency plays out in different ways, There's people who just fall in love at first sight and they get high, because there is a chemical change in your brain and in your body when you are attracted to someone. Things really change when you feel love. You are getting like, I don't, dopamine or some kind of euphoric, drug in your brain that just, woo, you're just, in another level, in another dimension. And if the relationship is healthy and the connection is healthy, or relatively healthy, then it can be a good thing, because it creates a bond, it creates attachment, but you do eventually have to go through like a power struggle and, grow and work through issues and all of this stuff later on. The high doesn't last forever. But for a love addict, they always need the high. When the high starts going away, the crazy comes out. Whether you're sharing the crazy with the other person or you're just at home, feeling crazy, feeling empty, it's obsessing, the fear of abandonment, the fear of not knowing what this person's going to do and how they're going to react to you and what do they think of you, and all of that. If you're not getting that constant attention, constant reassurance from a partner or from a love interest, then you go into a tailspin and your sense of self becomes very threatened, very shaky, very out of control. And then on top of that, then your inner critic is like judging you, like, I'm crazy, what's wrong with me? And there's a sense of shame, and it's like any addiction. You deal with an array of emotions, and the addiction itself and how you react to it, the self-judgment that goes on, compounds the negative feelings, and it just creates a mess. And so sometimes it plays out with people, then like stalking a person or crimes of passion. A lot of really messed up stuff happens, and the root cause is love addiction. For myself, whenever I've experienced love addiction, I've been more controlled on the outside. Like, the person that I was feeling addicted or drawn to maybe wouldn't have known how I was feeling. I'd play it kind of cool. Sometimes not so cool, but but I wasn't like Glenn Close or anything. But inside, I felt very just like I could hardly function. My joy was gone. My sense of purpose was gone. Nothing, just didn't mean anything anymore. And this could be in a dynamic where the relationship wasn't even over. I just wasn't getting the attention and the praise and the love and all of the high stuff that I needed. And so that's very common too. People, and like the people I speak with and do readings for, a lot of times, they're functioning, they're doing their thing, but they're, maybe so fixated on this one person that they don't allow themselves to energetically or through, actions and choices to invite somebody who's actually available into their experience. And that's kind of the trick of, the shadow side of, or the flip side, I should say, of the desire to be in a relationship and have a relationship and have this person in your life. When it's unattainable and you obsess on it, even though it's unattainable or it's not happening or it's not really fulfilling you or treating you right or whatever, is that if you're so focused on this thing that's not really a relationship, then you don't ever get into a real relationship. And so there's also, a real fear of intimacy and a fear of, abandonment from somebody that you really, are emotionally connected to. And it's a lot of times it's like you don't even know how to really receive that love. And so this sort of quasi relationship or drama is safer. You might feel out of control, but that feels more familiar, and in your desire to stay in control, you feel like you have some control, it's a real mind thing, and so basically what I think people who want to stop the madness, because it will go on, and it will deplete you, and it will deplete your bank account, and it will deplete your friends and family, and it will deplete your self-esteem and your physical health. And, there's a big toll that happens when we fixate too much on relationships. We lose ourselves. We lose contact with why we are here, and why you are here is not to just love somebody and be loved by them. I mean, that has its place in life, and there's spiritual lessons and fun and life lessons and things that come from that. But that's when a relationship is two people sharing intimacy and working on it together, and there's a mutual kind of thing going on that's growing and evolving. But if you're having to chase it and you don't know where you stand and you don't know what's going on and you're in a state of panic and a desire to control the situation all the time, then you're not really in a relationship that's serving your life path. You're acting out an addiction. And that addiction is distracting you from a wound that you really owe it to yourself to take a look at. And a lot of times these wounds come from abandonment in childhood, not getting the message that your needs matter, and being ignored, growing up in an alcoholic or drug addict home. All sorts of things contribute to this. For myself, I had a mother who was a drug addict, and I had to leave her and live with my father, who was emotionally and verbally abusive and physically abusive for a time, with my stepmom and my sister. And just chaos, And there wasn't a proper amount of safety and emotional needs being met, and interest and what my little head was dealing with and thinking and feeling and all of this stuff. So, my inner child longed for that. We want that. We manage without it, and we kind of have to eventually suppress the desire, because it would be hard to function if we're always in a constant state of desire. And so we kind of, in childhood and adolescence, we suppress it, or we are obsessed with the opposite sex, at a young age, and try and get that high through boyfriends, and does this boy like me or that boy like me, and that kind of thing. But for the most part, we're not really conscious of the fact that our needs didn't get met, because it's all we know. But eventually, when we get a little bit older and we fall in love, it really, or we feel love, we feel like we're falling in love, that feeling of falling in love really brings out all of those needs and wants and feelings of abandonment, things that just were not dealt with, get stirred up when we are chemically and emotionally kind of attached to someone, and they start to pull away, or they don't give us the consistent supply that our brain and our psyche feels like it needs in order to function. We begin to feel the panic we maybe felt for a little bit as a kid, but then suppressed. We feel the desire to control that we felt as a kid, but we were too little. We didn't have any control. We didn't have any power. And so what good is that desire? So we suppress that, and it comes out. And that's what it is. It's not something to be ashamed of, because the origins, you have to take responsibility for your actions. And it's important to respect other people's boundaries. That's a lesson we all got to learn at some point. But you don't have to beat yourself up or think you're like a bad person or a crazy person for having these feelings. It's actually a normal reaction. It's cause and effect, It's the way our psyche, our psychology is made up as human beings, that if you go through that kind of childhood experience, you're going to have this kind of, adult relationships until you become conscious and you repair those wounds. Just like if you broke your leg as a kid and it never, was properly healed, you would probably walk strange as an adult until you had a doctor, or you learned how to do it yourself, or whatever. You set it right, you fix the leg, you get proper treatment for the injury, and then you begin to walk better. And that's true for the psychological and spiritual wounds that we suffer as kids and teenagers, is that you really have the choice to continue on and feel out of control and crazy and sad and angry and all of the feelings that you might go through for months, years even, You can continue on that path, or you can say, I need to stop. I need to look within and see why I feel this way about what one person thinks of me or doesn't think of me. Why is this one person's opinion, choices, whatever, setting my world into chaos and my emotions into panic? And I know for myself, there's been a handful of people, who have triggered this in me. And so it's like, well, what, why is it this one guy might make me feel, really good and then really bad. And then another guy comes along, makes me feel really good and really bad. It's like this consistent thing where it's like, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's something in me that is at the source of this. Maybe it's not what they think of me, but what I think of me that allows it to influence me. And that, because the feeling is like, oh, I need you, I love you, I can't imagine living without you, my precious, wonderful person. I love you, you're so wonderful, and without you I feel small and incomplete. And it's like such drama and intensity for this love, but yet I have felt that way over many people. Each one is so important. Oh, you complete me and I need you. And and it's not, it just doesn't make sense realistically that many people are just so important and so wonderful that I need them, It's like this need there's something else to it. There's something missing in the thinking. And the addiction element distracts us from really looking at that thing, because that thing we have been hiding and managing and protecting all of our life. And there is not a lot in the world that says, hey, heal your inner child. It's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's important to heal your inner child. Go there, look there. What's your inner child trying to tell you? It's not really all that present. It's there, but it's not really, around every corner. And so I want to encourage people who can relate. Maybe you're watching this and you're like, wow, I've never felt that. I'm perfectly in control in my relationships and, all that good stuff. That's great, Good for you. You probably had great parents and, and that's great. But if you relate on some level to what I'm saying, then start looking at your inner child, Think about your childhood. Look at pictures of when you were young. Think about and reflect on what was going on for you at different ages, what was going on in your parents' relationship, what abandonment experiences have you had, what was it that you really needed that went unmet, and start to figure out how to give yourself that. And how to stop expecting it to come from a partner. Because nobody can really give you that. The only people who can give you that, what you're truly looking for on that deep level, are your parents and yourself. A partner can sometimes provide you with an emotionally corrective experience, and when you have that kind of relationship, that's great. But that's not all that common. And if you're waiting around to have, a conscious, psychologically savvy partner who can give you that corrective emotional experience without, you all having to like go to therapy and maybe, learn how to do this for each other, which I highly recommend. But, until you have that kind of option, it's really up to you. And it's up to you to maybe try and heal these things directly with your parents through communicating and talking about the past. And not all parents are into that, but it can be very healing if they are. And if they're not, then you may need to, rework your relationship and maybe set some boundaries and protect yourself so that you're not re-experiencing neglect or rejection or abandonment, emotional, invalidation of your needs and that kind of thing. You may have to change the dynamics of the relationships in order to heal and in order to stop playing that out in your relationships with the opposite sex or same sex, but your romantic relationships, and stop attracting that energy into your life. And so you just begin to love yourself and nurture yourself and let yourself let the pain and the fear and the grief out. I think that's so important, is to let yourself feel all the crazy, all of, use the trigger that you're experiencing, use it. But rather than obsessing it, focusing on it's about him, it's about her, it's about what they're doing or not doing, just being like, okay, I feel really sad, angry, whatever. And then you stay with that emotion. You express it, you feel it, but in your mind while you're feeling it, you take yourself back into, when have I felt like this before? When I was a little kid, did I feel like this? What experience was similar to this? And you let yourself grieve those past wounds. And I tell you what, it can be scary, it can be really intense, but it can also, you release it out of your emotional body. And over time, and sometimes just the very next day or next hour, you feel lighter. You feel more sane. You feel more like your stable, strong self, because it's like you got that demon, for lack of a better word, you got it out of your system. You're not holding it inside of you. And it helps you see the present more clearly. And it may be something that you have to do over time. Get help. There's a lot of therapists that know how to help you with this. If you're struggling, get help. Get somebody to, help you work it out, talk it out. Do different exercises and things like that, because, it doesn't change on its own. It usually just plays out over and over and over again, and you go up and you go down and you're up and you're down and you're all over the place, and you lose sight of what you really came here to do and what you came to contribute, and what your talents and your gifts and your purpose and all of that just goes ignored because you're so wrapped up in the drama of love. So give yourself permission to start healing. Forgive yourself for wasting so much time on relationships that were not really that fulfilling. Know that they were trying to wake you up on a spirit level, soul level. The relationship is trying to point out to you where you've been wounded so that you can heal it and move forward in life. And, looking at it from that point of view can take a lot of the shame and the confusion over, and the victimization, the feeling of, why me? Why would he treat me like this? It's like, well, he's treating you like this because your dad treated you like this, and that's what you got to look at, and you got to heal that. And so on a soul level, this person's doing you a favor by treating you like this, because it's giving you the opportunity to release pain and become conscious of pain that is on some level holding you back. And you don't deserve to be held back. You deserve to move forward and shine and do what you came here to do. Let's cut out the melodrama so we can wake up the whole wide world. Let's make up and start all over and awaken the boys and the girls.